Purdue will have the nation's best offense in 2025.
You are Locked On Boilermakers, your daily podcast on the Purdue Boilermakers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Boilermakers here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your host, Nick Arvin. We're talking Boilermakers today. We got a jam-packed episode heading your way today on this beautiful Thursday. We're talking, will Purdue be the NCAA's best offense going into 2025? We got Quinn Costello, a top recruit in that 2026 class, officially is visiting Purdue. We'll talk about him and what that visit will entail. And then we have a very special guest today. We got Tyler Wojciak, talks Notre Dame here on the Locked On Network for Locked On Irish, and a producer over at Fox Sports. He's got great insight. We're talking that Week 4 matchup against Notre Dame for Purdue. We got new guests coming every day here on the show, so super excited about that one. As you guys know, we are on the road to 1,000 subscribers. We're trying to hit that big goal by kickoff Week 1. It's a lofty goal, but I know y'all can do it. So let's go ahead and get right into this episode. We're going to talk about Purdue's offense this year, and that's something that Matt Painter has made known. That's his goal for this year. His goal is to get this Purdue offense to be the number one offense in the nation, whether that's measured by efficiency, total production from that offense. He just knows that he wants that offense to be the number one offense in the country, the number one offense in the NCAA. And that's a good pattern for success if you're Purdue. If you have that offense with all the people that you bring back, if you're able to maintain a level of production that we saw last year, but then add to that with the additional pieces that you pick up in the transfer portal, whether that's an Oscar Clough or guys that you bring in, whether that's an Antoine West Jr. or an Omier Meyer. We'll see who plugs in where. But the speculation about this really kind of exploded this morning when Raphael Davis of Big Ten Network, he took to X and said, hey, Purdue's offense, it's going to be explosive this year. And he said, these are going to be the averages for Purdue this year. We got TKR, 23 points per game. Braden Smith, 18 points per game. Fletcher, Lawyer at 14 points a game. And then a little note, must average 50 points per game between them. Cox and Harris, 15 points a game. Oscar Clough, Daniel Jacobson, 15 points a game, and Omier Meyer for 12 points a game. And if you guys weren't able to add all of that up in your heads, that's completely fine. That's a total of 97 points per game between the top 8 guys on Purdue's roster. And there was some backlash about that. Obviously, Purdue has all the pieces to have a pristine offense this year, to be one of the best offenses in the country for every metric. But 97 points per game is absolutely insane when you think about Purdue. It's absolutely insane when you think about any team in the nation. 97 points a game is something that we don't see in college basketball. That's something that's extremely rare to get an offense that's as high-powered as that is. And there has been some backlash from other fan bases saying, hey, Purdue's not going to be able to pull something off like this. But although 97 points per game, that's a big number. Sitting here saying in August that Purdue's going to average 97 points per game, I don't know if you can necessarily do that. I don't know if you should put that much pressure on this offense, but what I'm telling you is that it will be the number one offense in the country. I don't know if Purdue's going to average 97 points a game, but they're sure going to be in the high 80s. This offense is going to be something that we haven't seen in a while. So you can say 97 points a game, all these guys need to score this number. And while I think that's kind of unfair to assess Purdue, I think the overall standpoint of saying, hey, this is going to be an offense that we're not used to for Purdue. We've seen explosive offenses under Matt Painter, but when you put together all the pieces that Matt Painter has put together, looking at this team going into 2025, this offense honestly may be unprecedented. This may be better than any Purdue team we've ever seen. And that's a high praise to assert a team that hasn't stepped on the court together yet. But just looking from an August standpoint, looking at the offseason, looking at what this team's going to be, this team has all the capabilities of being one of the most dangerous teams on the offensive side of the ball that we've ever seen, not just at Purdue, not just like in the Big Ten, but from a nationwide standpoint. We've never seen the amount of pieces. We've never seen a team that was already national championship ready the way that this Purdue team was. And then to add guys like an Omier Meyer, to add a starting center in Oscar Clough, those additions, those like transfers that you bring in, those recruits that you bring in are going to get playing time. They're going to jump in and they're going to be able to produce for Purdue. When you talk about what's a successful team, when you think about what the expectations are for this Purdue team this year, I disagree completely with anyone saying, hey, this team's going to go undefeated. I don't think that's the conversation that we need to be having now. When you look at it from a standpoint of, hey, this team has the opportunity to compete for a national championship, that's the standpoint that we as fans, that analysts, they need to have. We don't need to be putting 97 points a game on the head of Purdue, because then you underachieve. If you go under 97 points a game, which, like I said, is absolutely astronomical, then it's deemed not successful for Purdue, when that's as far away from the truth as possible. This team may not average 97 points a game. But when you think about what Braden Smith can do, when you think about, hey, this is a guy that's on pace for the assist record, he may not score as many points as some would expect. He may not score as many points as he did last year, but he doesn't need to. You play team-winning basketball. Basketball isn't just about scoring points. Matt Painter knows that. He knows what his team needs to be, what this team needs to develop into. And whether that's some guys taking a back seat, whether that's a CJ Cox or a Jakari Harris not scoring as many points and being the great point of attack defenders that they are, or whether that's, like I said, a Braden Smith focusing more on the playmaking side of the ball and not taking it to the hoop as much. I honestly don't feel like that would be as bad for Purdue. I think that Purdue would see a benefit from all these guys not scoring as much. Purdue's in a very interesting situation, a very unique situation, where when you have all this talent, when you have all these mouths to feed, it can get a little bit tricky because everybody wants that ball in their hand. But where Purdue's different is this team is built of characters. This team is built of guys, and all the credit in the world to Matt Painter, because he's built a career on building players up that are unselfish, that want to be a part of the team. And we see that with Purdue this year. We see a team built together like Matt Painter has done in the past. However, the difference is this team plays together, but they have the power to run any team in the nation out of the gym. And we're going to see that this year. We're going to see a dominant offense, whether they score 97 points a game, whether they score 87 points a game. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day, because this team is going to be dominant. They're going to play together, and they're going to put the right guys on the floor that's going to lead to success. So we'll keep up with that. We'll keep up with where Purdue's going to be at going into this year, how that offense is going to play, what adjustments need to be made. We'll be covering all that for you guys here on Locked On Boilermakers. But next, we're going to be talking about a 2026 recruit. Matt Painter's trying to build up that 2026 class fast, and there's a guy by the name of Quinn Costello who might just be the next addition. We got that for you guys here next. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast. On average, in 15 minutes, effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked, Rugiet might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege and use LockedOnCollege to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOn purduebasketball.com/lockedoncollege and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compound drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. We've been talking here on the show about Purdue's 2026 recruiting class, and it's been one that Matt Painter's really been focusing on. We see this core of Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, and then Trey Coffin-Rain is numbered. They're only going to be here for another year, so we need to start rebuilding. We need to rebuild the future of this program, and one of the guys that we've had news of is Quinn Costello, 2026 class, top 30 recruit, 6'10", strong power forward that can stretch the floor, can get it done with the three ball, can also get it inside. He's really working on his inside game while also developing that three that we've seen he's lethal from. Boston, Massachusetts kid in that 2026 class. And when you think about who he is, the kind of player that he wants to be, he fits into what Matt Painter does so well, almost perfectly. One of the highest ranked recruits in the 2026 class, has really been turning heads this summer, has really gained in his stock, was kind of a mid-tier 4-star guy. And like I said, he's really kind of bounced up, got into that top 30 range, is on the border of 4 or 5-star type of guy. And so last week when we talked about him, he released his top 6, and I'll go over that for you. That's North Carolina, Minnesota, Texas, Michigan, Michigan State, and of course, Purdue. So when that list came out, I said, Purdue is a real candidate for this guy. He seems to really enjoy being around Painter. He seems to really realize the traditions of Purdue, the way that Matt Painter has been so good at developing guys just like him. And it's been someone that Matt Painter has really gone after. He sees Costello. He sees that 2026 class needs to start getting to building to kind of fill the gaps that are going to be left after some of these guys on this team move on. And so far we've seen a perfect fit, and that's where this comes in. So today, this morning, the announcement gets made. Costello reposts a tweet from Rivals that the official visit has been made. This weekend, Quinn Costello will be visiting West Lafayette. He'll be visiting Purdue University. He'll definitely be visiting Matt Painter, and I think Matt Painter is going to make a real play for him this weekend on this official visit. He may join Luke Ertl, who just got a commitment out of that 2026 class, the number 1 recruit in the state of Indiana, and Costello is right up there with them. He's a high-quality recruit, right up there with Ertl, a big to play alongside with a point guard like Ertl. It's the perfect connection for the 2026 class. If you could dream up before the class even started, before the recruiting window opened for these guys. Obviously, Costello wasn't as high renowned as he is now at the time that his recruiting window opened, but when you think about pairing 2 guys up in this 2026 class that will complement each other perfectly, Luke Ertl, Quinn Costello. That's your duo. Those are the 2 guys that you want to bring in to replace a guy like Braden Smith and a TKR. That's the 2 guys that you want to bring in that we've seen. Purdue has built a culture on consistency because Matt Painter has done a great job at developing guys and not just being a one-and-done coach like we saw with John Calipari, who really kind of revolutionized that concept at Kentucky. He hasn't been that type of coach. Even with the changing landscape of college basketball, he's been the type of guy to recruit athletes, to build them up, whether that's a 5-star or not. Usually we've seen these 4-star, the 3-star guys be really the pride of a Matt Painter program. And we've seen the consistency year after year. Purdue is consistently good. Purdue rarely takes off years, and that's because Matt Painter has done such a great job recruiting year after year, building up classes, and then not just stopping at the recruiting side of things, developing his recruits, making sure that he doesn't throw these guys out into minutes that they're not prepared for, preparing his guys, making sure that they're ready for Big Ten play, they're ready to play in some of the toughest environments that college basketball has to offer. And we see that with the success of the program and where this program is right now. It's all because of Matt Painter, his ability to recruit, and even more importantly, his ability to develop players. So bring that back to Quinn Costello. We got some options right now. The way it's looking, I say that North Carolina's in that race. I think Michigan State, Tom Izzo, definitely making a push. But I would say that Purdue's the front runner right now. If I had to make a projection, if I had to put my money on where Quinn Costello is going, I would say it looks like Purdue right now. Purdue is the favorite right now for Quinn Costello. This weekend, we may have more answers about Costello, what he's thinking, where his mind's at. But for now, when you see what he's doing on social media, his interactions with Purdue, his excitement to get this visit done, his really eagerness to get out to West Lafayette to meet with Matt Painter, those are all the signs that he's interested in playing for Painter. It shows that he's interested in joining Luke Ertl in that 2026 class. And he's interested in playing for a head coach that will be able to develop him better than anybody else, any other program in the nation. And that's something that only Coach Painter offers. And that's something that makes Purdue such a great option for kids that are coming up ready to develop and guys that have NBA aspirations one day. Coach Painter will get you there, and that's his selling point. We'll see if he's able to execute that with Quinn Costello this weekend. I believe he will be able to, but we'll have more updates for you on that. Hopefully, Costello joins that 2026 recruiting class right alongside our guy, Luke Ertl. No years are going to be taken off. There's not going to be a rebuild period needed after Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer leave. We're going to be able to plug these guys in. Matt Painter's going to build a strong 2026 class, and Purdue basketball is going to be a staple in the NCAA, and they're going to be a staple in college basketball for years to come. We'll talk more here next. If you're running a business, every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you needed a service. If the first person didn't answer, did you wait? Probably not. You moved on. That's why you need OpenPhone, so you never miss an opportunity to connect with your customers. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system designed to streamline and scale your customer communications. Do you juggle 2 phones just to keep business and personal calls separate? Well, OpenPhone has solved that instantly. See why over 60,000 businesses trust OpenPhone. They're offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnCollege. That's OpenPhone.com/LockedOnCollege. They'll even port over your existing numbers for free. OpenPhone. No missed calls, no missed customers. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. Preseason is already heating up, and college football isn't far behind. Whether you got your eye on big-name quarterbacks or breakout running backs, PrizePicks makes it easy to get you in the game. For this week, PrizePicks is offering major max discounts. Max discount number 1, Avery Johnson. Over half a passing yard. Get in on that Farmageddon this weekend in Dublin, Ireland. Get in on Dak Prescott as well. Thursday night football, week 1 against Philadelphia. Over half a passing yard. Those are locks. PrizePicks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you can cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. PrizePicks, run your game. 12 days till kickoff continues once again today on Locked On Boilermakers, and I have a very special guest. We got Tyler Wojciak of Locked On Irish, Fox Sports producer, coming on the show. How are you doing today, Tyler? And thank you for coming.
Of course, man. Thanks for having me. Doing great.
Great. All right, so we're going to talk Irish. That game comes number 4 on Purdue's schedule this year. There's been a lot of talk so far this offseason for Notre Dame and Purdue. A little bit of a similarity when you talk about a quarterback battle. That just got decided for you guys. C.J. Carr announced the starter, but him and Kenny Minchie, they were in a tight quarterback battle throughout a lot of the offseason. Kind of tell me a little bit about that quarterback battle and how that got wrapped up going into the final weeks of camp.
It's been a really interesting battle that has been going on throughout the season. At one point, it was a three-man battle, which included Steve Angeli, who is now going to be the starting quarterback over at Syracuse, but he left after spring practice when it became clear that it was going to be either CJ Carr or Kenny Minchey. They battled it out throughout the summer into camp. I think most people kind of expected a decision to come within the first week, but it was such a close competition that it dragged on a little bit longer. And then finally on August 19th, it was announced that CJ Carr was going to be the starting quarterback. I think the exciting thing about CJ is that he has elite arm talent, a ton of potential. Like, he's made some throws in spring games that all the fans got to see that, frankly, we haven't seen a Notre Dame quarterback make since like Jimmy Clausen or even Brady Quinn. Now, the issue is he's still very young. He's a redshirt freshman. He has been turnover prone in practice. So it's just going to be a matter of, can he clean up those mistakes, or can he reach his ceiling? Because if he reaches his ceiling, this team could go really far again in the college football playoff.
Obviously, Riley Leonard comes over here last year. A very notable name. He's been very prevalent when you think about Notre Dame football. He's on the Colts roster now. So, and even in the state of Indiana, still a prevalent name. When you think about production, what he gave to Notre Dame last year, do you think a guy like Carr is going to be able to plug in and give Notre Dame the same production that got that team to the national championship?
Certainly not on the ground. Like, they're not going to be running QB power with CJ Carr nearly as much as they did with Riley Leonard. He is an elite athlete, a great running back, essentially in the backfield, who can also throw the ball downfield a little bit as well. So that was one thing that I feel like a lot of Notre Dame fans sort of took for granted, I guess you could say, because he was putting up big numbers. He was putting up a bunch of touchdowns, but a lot of them came on the ground, and fans wanted to see Notre Dame air the ball out more, and that just wasn't Riley Leonard's strength. So now I think this year the offense is going to look a lot different. They're still going to run the ball, but they're just going to hand it to Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price, and that stable of running backs more than they did last year, because they're just not going to run it as much at the quarterback. I think that you'll see similar output in terms of yards, because I think the idea with Carr is to push the ball downfield a lot more than they did last season. But in terms of touchdowns, I don't think Carr is going to come anywhere close, because Riley Leonard was just that good. He set the single season rushing total record for a quarterback at Notre Dame, and he really carried the offense at different points in the season, especially near the end zone. So it's going to look a lot different. I think the offense as a whole will be different because of that, but I have pretty high hopes for CJ Carr this year.
When you think about the Big Ten, you think about a history of great running backs. And last year, Purdue's running defense was terrible. They got killed in a lot of those games, including against Indiana at the end of the year. That game was pretty rough. When you think about what Barry Odom's tried to do after he's gotten hired, he's tried to build a defensive identity. That's something that he prides himself a lot on. And with that, he's wanted to create a good run defense. Now, when you think about Notre Dame, you're going to think this year primarily going to be a running team. When you think about a guy like Jeremiah Love, who's one of, if not the best running back in the nation, I assume that that's going to be a lot of y'all's offense. Would that be fair to say that Jeremiah Love will kind of be the bell cow for you guys in a lot of that offense this year? Or where do you think that a lot of that rushing attack is going to come from?
Bell cow is an interesting term, because I think that suggests you're going to feed him 30 times a game. And I don't think that's going to be the case with Jeremiah Love. I think they're going to try to utilize him more in the biggest games on the schedule, which is at Miami, home against Texas A&M. No offense to Purdue. I don't think they're going to give him the ball as much in that game. Maybe USC later on down the road, because the issue is Notre Dame made it to the college football playoff last year, which was great. And Jeremiah Love had that super exciting 98-yard touchdown run against Indiana, and then the run against Penn State when he shook off like 5 defenders on a 2-yard run into the end zone. But the issue for Notre Dame was, even though he was making some good plays, he was hurt throughout the playoffs. Like, he was not anywhere close to 100%, which just kind of shows you just how good he is, the fact that he was able to do that kind of stuff when he basically only had one knee, because he got hurt in that USC game, the last game of the regular season. And then in that Ohio State game, he was a non-factor because he could barely move around the field. He re-aggravated that knee injury against Georgia, was basically a non-factor in that game. So I think with this Notre Dame team having really high aspirations to make it back to the college football playoff and make a run, I think they've got to be really strategic with how they use him. They're probably going to use him a lot in those games I mentioned earlier, but then in those other games, I think they're going to lean more heavily on Jadarian Price, on Nolan James Jr., who's a freshman, Aeneas Williams. So they're still going to run the ball, but I think that Jeremiah Love's usage is going to be a little bit limited, certainly more so than people would expect, or compared to a guy like Ashton Jeanty last year who had, nearly 300 carries and had to literally carry the Boise State offense.
So we talk about Jeremiah Love. You bring up a good guy in Ashton Jeanty. These are notable running backs. Purdue has a great running back, but one that's not going to get the recognition of a Jeremiah Love, of an Ashton Jeanty, and that's a guy by the name of Devin Mockabee. Devin Mockabee, 4-year type of guy from Boonville, Indiana. He plays his first 3 years just under 1,200 yards away from becoming Purdue's all-time leading rusher. I talk about if Purdue wants to upset some teams this year, if they want to win games, they're going to have to focus on the run. They're going to have to build an identity of running the football, put the ball in Maccabee's hands, and find success. When you talk about Notre Dame's defense, do you think that defense is going to be good at stopping the run this year? We saw a great defense, or else they wouldn't have been in the national championship last year. But what were they able to do this offseason to kind of build on what they were last year and to create that identity of stopping the run?
Well, unfortunately for Notre Dame, Al Golden, who was the defensive coordinator last year, won the Broyles Award for the top assistant coach in the country, is now the defensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals. Because as it turns out, when you lead one of the best defenses in football for a couple years in a row, other suitors are out there, including in the NFL. So losing him was definitely a blow to Notre Dame, but they replaced him with Chris Ash, who was the co-DC when Ohio State won the national championship under Urban Meyer back in 2014. So he certainly has had some success at the college level before. They bring back a ton of returning production, but really the strength of the Notre Dame defense last year was defending the pass. They were top 5 in every statistical category last year when it came to shutting down opponents' passing games. Like, really the only team that was able to pass the ball on them at all last year was Ohio State in the national championship game. So I think that is what they're going to lean on to try to prevent explosive plays, because even though Notre Dame was good against the run, it wasn't a weakness per se. They were, I think, like in the 40s in terms of opponents' rush yards per game, but that was strategic. They had a bend but don't break defense, but they were also very aggressive. They weren't like giving up a ton of yards, but they were willing to give up a few yards on the ground, knowing that, hey, when you have to pass the ball on 3rd and long, you're not going to get the ball downfield. So I think they're going to have a good running defense. Everything I've heard about the defense so far in camp is that they are very, very talented, that they are a violent group that likes to get after it, likes to lay the wood. So I have really high expectations, but it wouldn't shock me if teams are able to run the ball at least a little bit until they decide to tighten it up.
Obviously different circumstances, but you covered this team. You saw when Brian Kelly left and then the transition to Marcus Freeman. Like I said, different scenarios because Notre Dame didn't necessarily hit rock bottom the way that Purdue did last year. But what was that transition like? And what would you say from your perspective, watching Marcus Freeman transition into that role? Can we expect for Barry Odom taking over in that spot?
Well, I would say the circumstances are a lot different because what Marcus Freeman inherited from Brian Kelly was a really stable program. I mean, they went 11-1. They almost made the college football playoff before, or I guess after, Brian Kelly left for LSU. Like, they were still technically eligible. They needed a couple things to happen during conference championship weekend that did not go their way. But it was a possibility that Notre Dame could have made the college football playoff without a head coach. But even then, the difference was Marcus Freeman was a first-time head coach who had not even that much coaching experience, honestly, because he's that young compared to some of the other coaches. Like a guy like Kurt Cignetti, who's been coaching for decades, finally got an opportunity to be a head coach at a Power 4 program. So what Marcus Freeman inherited was something that was really good. He had to keep the train on the tracks, essentially, and then grow as a head coach in his own right, where for Odom, he has to completely rebuild. I would actually say a closer comparison would be what Brian Kelly had to do after Charlie Weiss left Notre Dame, because he was picking up the pieces at that point. Notre Dame finished 6-6 in Charlie Weiss's last year at Notre Dame, and things were not looking good. They were bleak. They really didn't have a whole lot going for him. Brian Kelly had to come in, completely change the culture, completely change the roster, and then build it up from there. And then by year 3, they made it to the national championship in 2012. They got absolutely housed in that game. Wasn't very entertaining for the national audience, but still, the fact that they went from 6-6 to a national championship in 3 years is pretty impressive. But you need someone who can come in, totally change everything. And then as the fans, you got to be a little bit patient. It's not going to happen overnight. But I think that if he's able to come in, sort of reshape the roster, fortunately he has the benefit of the transfer portal to do so, and then build from within, then maybe he could get the program back to kind of where we're accustomed to seeing Purdue.
I really appreciate your time, Tyler. Before you head out, I do have one more question for you. I've asked everyone that's kind of come on the show so far, but what are your expectations for Notre Dame this year? What is a good record projection for where the Irish will be, what that team is going to be this year under Marcus Freeman?
National championship.
All right. We heard it here first. National championship for the Irish. They'll have to beat Purdue week 4. We'll have more coverage of that game leading up until then. Thank you again, Tyler, for coming on the show. Check him out on Locked On Irish. Thank you again.
Of course, man. Anytime.
Huge thank you once again to Tyler for coming on the show and talking Irish with me. And thank you guys once again for making Locked On Boilermakers your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes to the college football landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you guys. And as always, boiler up, hammer down.